The automatic doors of Heritage Motors slid open with a quiet whoosh as David stepped inside. The cool air conditioning was a welcome relief after the humid afternoon outside. He adjusted his jacket and looked around the massive showroom. Rows of gleaming luxury cars sat under bright spotlights, their paint jobs so perfect they looked like they belonged in a museum rather than on a road. David had been traveling for hours. His flight from New York landed just 2 hours ago, and he came straight here without even stopping at his hotel. He was wearing his comfortable travel clothes, a pair of dark jeans, a plain navy jacket, and sneakers. After sitting in a cramped airplane seat, the last thing he wanted was to squeeze into a suit. Besides, he had always believed in seeing things as they really were, not as people wanted to show them. This dealership was his now. Well, technically it belonged to his investment company, but the papers were signed, the money transferred, and as of yesterday morning, Heritage Motors was officially his property. The previous owner had retired and moved to Florida, and David saw potential in this place. Good location, solid reputation, expensive inventory. He had plans to visit formally next week with his team, but curiosity got the better of him. He wanted to see how the place really operated when nobody knew the owner was watching. He walked slowly past a silver sports car, running his hand along its smooth hood. The price tag in the window made him smile. $200,000. He remembered when that amount of money seemed impossible to him. Growing up in a neighborhood where people struggled to pay rent, luxury cars like these were just fantasies. But he had worked hard, built his tech company from nothing, sold it for more money than he ever dreamed possible, and now he invested in businesses. This dealership was his latest project. A movement caught his eye. A man in an expensive suit was walking toward him with quick, purposeful steps. The man's expression was not friendly. David had seen that look before. The look of someone who had already made up their mind about you before saying a single word. "Can I help you?" the man asked, though his tone suggested he was not actually interested in helping at all. "Just looking around," David replied with a polite smile. "Beautiful cars you have here." The man crossed his arms. His name tag read Gerald Patterson, General Manager. He looked David up and down, his eyes pausing on the sneakers, then the casual jacket. "This is a luxury dealership. Our vehicles start at $75,000. Perhaps you would be more comfortable at one of the pre-owned lots on the other side of town." David felt his stomach tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. He had dealt with people like Gerald before. "I appreciate your concern, but I am exactly where I want to be." Gerald's jaw clenched. "Sir, I've been managing this dealership for 15 years. I know our clientele, and I know when someone is out of their element. I am trying to save you embarrassment." "Embarrassment?" David asked calmly. "These are serious vehicles for serious buyers," Gerald continued, his voice getting louder. Several salespeople nearby turned to watch. A couple browsing a white sedan also glanced over. "We do not have time for people who want to sit in cars they cannot afford just to take pictures for social media." David took a slow breath. "Stay calm," he told himself. "I understand you are protective of your inventory, but I would like to look around if that is okay." "Actually, it is not okay," Gerald said, stepping closer. "This is private property, and I have the right to refuse service to anyone. I think it would be best if you left." David looked around the showroom. Other employees were watching now, some looking uncomfortable, others simply staring. He could walk over to one of them and explain who he was. He could pull out his phone and show them the acquisition documents. He could even call his lawyer right now and have this resolved in minutes. But something stopped him. He wanted to see how far this would go. He wanted to understand exactly what kind of culture existed in this business that now bore his name. "I would like to see the office area," David said quietly, pointing toward the back where he knew the executive offices and financial department were located. "Just a quick look around?" Gerald actually laughed. "The office area? What, are you looking for a job now? Let me guess, you want to be a salesman?" He turned to the other employees. "Did everyone hear that? This gentleman wants access to our private offices." A few people laughed nervously. Others looked away, clearly uncomfortable. David remained still. "I am asking politely. I would like to walk around your facility, and I am telling you no," Gerald shot back. "In fact, I think we are done being polite here." He snapped his fingers at a security guard standing near the entrance. "Brian, come here, please." The security guard, a young man who looked barely out of his 20s, walked over slowly. He looked between Gerald and David, confusion on his face. "Escort this gentleman off the property," Gerald ordered. Brian hesitated. "Sir, is there a problem? Has he done something wrong?" "He is trespassing," Gerald said firmly. "And I am asking you to remove him. Now." David raised his hand slightly, showing he meant no trouble. "It is fine," he said to Brian. "I will leave. No need for any drama." But as he turned toward the door, he looked back at Gerald one more time. The manager stood there with his arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on his face, completely confident in his authority. "You are going to regret this," David said quietly. "By tomorrow morning, everything will be different." Gerald laughed loudly. "Is that a threat? Are you going to leave me a bad review online?" "I am terrified," David did not respond. He simply walked toward the exit, Brian, the security guard, following awkwardly behind him. As the automatic doors opened and the afternoon heat hit his face again, David pulled out his phone. He had some calls to make. Tomorrow morning was going to be very interesting. David sat in his rental car across the street from the dealership, watching through the large glass windows. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. He had faced discrimination before in his life, but it never got easier. Each time felt like a fresh wound. He could see Gerald inside, walking around like he owned the place. The irony was almost funny. Almost. David pulled out his phone and dialed his attorney. "Michael, it's David. We need to move up the announcement. Tomorrow morning, first thing. Get the team ready." Back inside the dealership, Gerald was feeling quite pleased with himself. He gathered a few of his senior salespeople near the coffee machine in the break room. "You all saw what happened out there, right?" Gerald said, pouring himself a cup. "That is exactly the kind of situation we need to avoid. People coming in here who clearly cannot afford our inventory, wasting our time, making our real customers uncomfortable." Tom, one of the veteran salespeople, nodded slowly but said nothing. He had worked at Heritage Motors for 8 years and had seen Gerald turn away people before. It always left a bad taste in his mouth, but Gerald was the boss. Speaking up meant risking your job. But Jennifer, a newer salesperson who had only been there 6 months, could not stay quiet. "How do you know he could not afford anything? You did not even talk to him about his budget or what he was looking for." Gerald set down his coffee cup with a sharp clink. "Jennifer, you are still learning how this business works. I have been doing this for 15 years. You develop an instinct for these things. Trust me, I saved us all a lot of wasted time." "But what if you were wrong?" Jennifer pressed. "What if he actually had money and now he is going to buy from our competitors?" "Then our competitors can waste their time," Gerald snapped. "Now can we get back to work? We have actual customers to attend to." Jennifer walked back to the showroom floor, but something about the whole situation bothered her. She had taken this job because she needed the money. Single mom, 2 kids, bills piling up. But watching someone get treated like that just because of how they looked, it reminded her of all the times people had judged her, made assumptions about her capabilities because she was a woman in a male-dominated industry. She pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. She wrote down everything she remembered: the time, what Gerald said, how the man had remained so calm despite the disrespect. She was not sure why she was documenting it, but her gut told her this might matter later. The rest of the afternoon passed normally. Customers came and went. A young couple bought a sedan. An older gentleman test drove a luxury SUV. Gerald moved through the showroom with his usual confidence, laughing with longtime customers, directing his staff with authority. As closing time approached, Gerald called a staff meeting for the next morning. 9 a.m. sharp, everyone, he announced. Mandatory attendance. We are going to discuss customer standards and protecting our brand reputation. I will be using today's incident as a teaching example. Tom caught up with Jennifer as they walked to their cars. You should not have questioned him like that, he said quietly. Gerald does not forget things like that. Maybe somebody should question him more often, Jennifer replied. She clicked her key fob and her old Honda beeped in response. Tom drove a nice BMW, one of the perks of being a top salesman. But Jennifer was still building her client base, still proving herself. I am just saying, be careful, Tom warned. I have seen people lose their jobs for less. That evening, David sat in his hotel room with his laptop open. On the screen was the complete staff roster for Heritage Motors. 23 employees total. He read through their files, sales numbers, performance reviews, years of service. Gerald Patterson had been with the company for 15 years, just like he had said. His numbers were decent but not exceptional. Several formal complaints had been filed against him over the years by other employees, but nothing had ever been done about them. The previous owner had apparently preferred to avoid confrontation. David made notes. He had built his first company with 12 employees who became like family. He learned early that culture started at the top. One toxic manager could poison an entire organization. And from what he had experienced today, Gerald was definitely toxic. His phone rang. It was his business partner, Richard. "I heard what happened. You okay?" "I am fine," David said. "But that dealership has problems. Big ones. So what are you going to do?" David smiled. "I am going to fix them." The next morning, Gerald arrived at the dealership 30 minutes early. He liked being the first one there, turning on all the lights, getting the coffee started. It made him feel important and control. He had prepared a whole presentation for the staff meeting, complete with printouts about maintaining brand standards and customer profiling techniques. The corporate attorneys arrived at 8:30. Gerald met them in the parking lot, confused. "Good morning. I was not expecting anyone from corporate today. Did I miss something on my calendar?" "Just here for the staff meeting," one of the attorneys said, not offering any more explanation. Gerald's confusion grew, but he shrugged it off. Maybe they wanted to observe his management style. Fine. He would show them how a real professional handled things. Employees started trickling in. Jennifer arrived with coffee from the shop next door. Tom came in talking on his phone. Brian, the security guard, looked tired. He had worked a double shift at his second job. At exactly 9 a.m., everyone gathered in the conference room. Gerald stood at the front with his presentation materials. The corporate attorneys sat in the back, their faces unreadable. "Good morning, everyone," Gerald began. "Thank you all for being on time. We are going to discuss something very important today." The conference room door opened. David walked in, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and polished leather shoes. He looked like he had just stepped out of a boardroom in Manhattan because he had. The room went completely silent. Gerald stared, his mouth slightly open. That was the guy from yesterday, the one he had thrown out. But why was he here? Why was he dressed like that? And why were the corporate attorneys standing up as he entered? One of the attorneys stepped forward. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. I would like to introduce you to David Chen, the new majority owner of Heritage Motors. The acquisition was finalized last week, and Mr. Chen is here today to meet his team and discuss the future of this dealership." Gerald felt the blood drain from his face. His legs suddenly felt weak. No, this could not be happening. David looked directly at Gerald, his expression calm but his eyes sharp as steel. "Hello again," David said quietly. "I believe we met yesterday." The silence in the conference room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. 23 employees sat frozen in their chairs, eyes darting between David at the front of the room and Gerald, whose face had gone from pale white to bright red in a matter of seconds. Jennifer felt her heart racing. She glanced down at her phone in her lap, at the notes she had typed yesterday. Her instinct had been right. This was going to matter. David walked to the front of the room with calm, measured steps. He did not look angry. He did not look smug. He looked like a man who had a job to do, and he was going to do it professionally. For those who do not know me, my name is David Chen. I am the founder of Tech Vision Solutions, which I sold 3 years ago. Since then, I have been investing in businesses that I believe have potential for growth and positive change. Last week, I purchased Heritage Motors. I was supposed to introduce myself formally next Monday, but I decided to come by yesterday to see how things operate when nobody knows the owner is watching. He paused, letting that sink in. Several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I walked into this dealership wearing casual clothes after a long flight. I was tired, but I was excited. I wanted to see the business I had just invested millions of dollars into. I wanted to see the team, the culture, the customer service that had been described to me during the acquisition process. Gerald finally found his voice. "Mr. Chen, I can explain." David held up one hand. "Please let me finish." "You will have your chance to speak." Gerald's mouth snapped shut, but his jaw was clenched so tight it looked painful. Within minutes of entering the showroom, I was profiled, dismissed, and ultimately thrown out by the general manager. David continued. His voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath. I was told I was in the wrong neighborhood. I was told I could not afford the vehicles here. I was accused of wanting to take pictures for social media. And when I asked to look around my own property, I was physically escorted off the premises. Gasps rippled through the room. Tom put his head in his hands. Brian, the security guard, looked like he might be sick. I want everyone here to understand something, David said, looking around at each face. What happened yesterday was not just rude. It was not just bad customer service. It was discrimination, plain and simple, and it has no place in any business that I own. Jennifer raised her hand slightly, her voice shaking. Mr. Chen, I recorded some of what happened. I mean, not video, but I wrote down everything I could remember right after. Timestamps, exact words. I felt like something was wrong, so I documented it. David looked at her with genuine appreciation. What is your name? Jennifer Rodriguez. Thank you, Jennifer. That took courage. Can you share what you wrote? Jennifer pulled out her phone with trembling hands and read her notes. Every dismissive comment Gerald made, every assumption about David's financial situation, every moment of disrespect. As she read, several employees nodded. They had witnessed it too. When Jennifer finished, David turned to Gerald. Do you dispute any of this? Gerald stood up, his hands spread wide. Mr. Chen, you have to understand. This is a luxury dealership. We get people coming in all the time who are not serious buyers. They waste our salespeople's time. They sit in cars they cannot afford. I was protecting the business. I was protecting your investment. By judging people based on their appearance? David asked quietly. By using my experience and instincts, Gerald shot back, then seemed to realize his tone was too defensive. Look, I have been doing this for 15 years. I have built relationships with our best customers. I know this market inside and out. Yesterday was it was a misunderstanding. If I had known who you were— stop right there, David interrupted. If you had known who I was, so you agree that you treated me differently because you did not think I was important? That is exactly the problem, Gerald. Every person who walks through those doors deserves respect. Not because they might be the owner. Not because they might have money. But because they are human beings. Gerald sat back down heavily. He knew it was over. But he was not going down without trying to save face. Are you really going to throw away 15 years of loyal service over one mistake? I have made you money. I have kept this dealership running smoothly. The previous owner never had a problem with how I managed things. David pulled out a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the table. Actually, that is not quite true. I found 6 formal complaints filed against you over the past 8 years. 3 from employees about hostile work environment. 3 from customers about discriminatory treatment. The previous owner chose to ignore them. I will not. The room went dead silent again. Tom stared at the table. He had filed one of those complaints 4 years ago after watching Gerald berate a Hispanic family who came in to look at cars. Nothing had happened, so Tom never spoke up again. He felt ashamed now. But those were resolved, Gerald sputtered. Those were just people being overly sensitive. They were warnings that you ignored, David said firmly. Look, Gerald, I want to be clear about something. I do not enjoy this. I do not take pleasure in this moment. But I have a responsibility to every employee here, to every customer who walks through those doors, and to my own values. I cannot have a manager who treats people the way you treated me yesterday. I cannot build the business I want to build with that kind of leadership. Gerald's face crumpled. For the first time, he seemed to understand that this was really happening. Please, I have a mortgage. I have kids in college. I need this job. David felt a flicker of sympathy, but it did not change what he had to do. I understand that, and I am sorry. The attorneys here will handle your severance package according to your contract. You will receive everything you are entitled to, but effective immediately, your employment at Heritage Motors is terminated. The corporate attorney stood and handed Gerald an envelope. Gerald took it with shaking hands, stared at it for a long moment, then slowly stood up. He looked around at the faces of people he had worked with for years. Some looked away. Others met his eyes with expressions he could not quite read. This is not fair, Gerald said quietly. One mistake. Just one mistake, Jennifer spoke up, her voice stronger now. It was not one mistake, Mr. Patterson. I have been here 6 months, and I have seen you turn away at least a dozen people because you decided they did not look right. You just never got caught before. Gerald had no response to that. He walked toward the door, then turned back one more time. You will regret this, Mr. Chen. This dealership needs me. David shook his head slowly. No, Gerald. This dealership needs to be better. And it will be. The door closed behind Gerald with a soft click. For a moment, nobody moved. Then David turned back to the remaining employees and his expression softened slightly. I know that was difficult to witness, but I need everyone here to understand that this is a new beginning for Heritage Motors. Things are going to change starting today. David looked around the conference room at the faces staring back at him. Some people looked relieved. Others looked nervous. A few looked genuinely curious about what would happen next. He pulled out a chair and sat down, making himself level with everyone else instead of standing above them like a boss giving orders. I know you all have questions, he began, and probably some concerns about job security. So let me be clear right from the start. Nobody else is losing their job today. What happened with Gerald was about his specific actions and a pattern of behavior that I cannot accept. The rest of you are my team now, and I want to work with you, not against you. Tom raised his hand hesitantly. What about those of us who saw what Gerald was doing over the years but did not speak up? Are we in trouble too? David appreciated the honesty. Tom, right? Tom nodded. I understand that speaking up against your boss is not easy, especially when you have bills to pay and a family to support. I am not here to punish people for being afraid. I am here to create an environment where you do not have to be afraid anymore. A woman in the back spoke up. Her name tag read Patricia. She had been with the dealership for 11 years. What kind of changes are you planning? I mean, this is a luxury dealership. We do have standards to maintain. Absolutely, David agreed. And those standards should be about the quality of our vehicles, the expertise of our staff, and the excellence of our service. They should never be about judging people by their appearance or making assumptions about what they can afford. Some of the wealthiest people I know dress like they shop at thrift stores, and some people working regular jobs save for years to buy their dream car. We have no right to make those decisions for them. He stood up and walked to the whiteboard. Here is what is going to change, starting immediately. First, mandatory training for everyone, and I mean everyone, including me, on diversity, inclusion, and unconscious bias. Second, we are implementing a new customer service protocol. Every person who walks through that door gets greeted with respect and genuine assistance. Period. Third, I want to hear from you, all of you. What is working? What is not? What would make this a better place to work? Jennifer raised her hand. Mr. Chen, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why did you buy a car dealership? I mean, you sold a tech company. You could invest in anything. Why this? David smiled. It was the first real smile he had shown since entering the room. My father worked 3 jobs when I was growing up. One of them was washing cars at a dealership across town. I used to sit in the waiting area doing my homework while he scrubbed tires and vacuumed interiors. I watched how the salespeople treated him, like he was invisible, like his work did not matter. But I also saw how he took pride in making those cars shine. He taught me that every job has dignity if you do it with integrity. The room was completely quiet now, everyone hanging on his words. Years later, when I finally had enough money, I went to buy my first luxury car. I was dressed in a nice suit, had my bank statements ready, everything. And you know what? They still treated me differently. The salesman kept steering me toward the cheaper models, kept asking if I was sure I understood the payment plans. I bought the car, but the whole experience left a bad taste in my mouth. He turned back to face the group. So when the opportunity came to buy this dealership, I saw it as a chance to do things differently, to prove that you can run a successful luxury business while treating every human being with respect, to create jobs that people are proud to have, to make my father proud. Patricia spoke again, her voice softer now. Your father must be very proud of you. He passed away 5 years ago, David said quietly. But I hope he would be. Brian, the security guard who had escorted David out the previous day, looked like he was about to cry. Mr. Chen, I am so sorry about yesterday. Gerald told me to remove you and I just followed orders. I should have— Brian, stop, David interrupted gently. You did your job. You were respectful about it and you clearly felt uncomfortable with the situation. I saw that. You have nothing to apologize for. Brian nodded, wiping his eyes quickly. David looked at his watch. Okay, here is what is going to happen today. Jennifer, can you come up here for a moment? Jennifer stood up, surprised and a bit nervous. She walked to the front of the room. Jennifer showed courage yesterday by documenting what happened. And again today by speaking up. That is the kind of leadership this dealership needs, David announced. Effective immediately, Jennifer is promoted to interim assistant manager. She will work directly with me over the next few months as we restructure and rebuild the culture here. The room burst into applause. Jennifer stood there, stunned, tears streaming down her face. I do not know what to say. Say yes. David smiled. Yes. Absolutely yes. Tom stood up and started clapping louder. Soon everyone was on their feet. Jennifer had always been kind to everyone, always willing to help, always treating customers fairly. She deserved this. When the applause died down, David continued, "We are also going to implement something new. Starting next month, 10% of our profits will go into a community scholarship fund for young people interested in careers in the automotive industry. Kids from neighborhoods like the one I grew up in, who might not otherwise have opportunities. We are going to invest in the next generation." Patricia raised her hand again. "What about the training you mentioned? When does that start?" "Next week. I have already contacted a firm that specializes in workplace culture transformation. Everyone will participate, including me, and I will be here, working alongside all of you for the next 3 months. I want to understand every aspect of this business from the ground up." The meeting continued for another hour. David listened more than he talked. People shared stories, some good, some troubling. Tom admitted he had filed a complaint years ago that was ignored. Patricia talked about customers she had lost because Gerald scared them away. Brian shared that he had been working 2 jobs to make ends meet and was exhausted. By the end of the meeting, something had shifted in the room. The tension had eased. People were not just employees anymore. They were becoming a team with a shared purpose. As everyone filed out to start their workday, Jennifer lingered behind. "Mr. Chen, I just want to say thank you. I have been struggling as a single mom, trying to prove myself here, and this opportunity. It means everything." David shook her hand firmly. "You earned it, Jennifer. Now let us get to work and show everyone what this dealership can really be." She nodded and headed out to the showroom floor. David stood alone in the conference room for a moment, looking at the notes on the whiteboard. He thought about his father, about all those hours spent in waiting rooms, about the dignity of hard work regardless of what job you hold. This was just the beginning. The real work was ahead. But for the first time since buying the dealership, David felt truly hopeful about what they could build together. 3 months passed like a whirlwind at Heritage Motors. The transformation was not instant and it was not always easy, but it was real. David kept his promise. Every single day, he was there in the showroom learning the business from the ground up. He spent mornings with the mechanics, afternoons with the sales team, and evenings reviewing finances with Jennifer. He learned how to detail cars, how to handle difficult customer negotiations, how to manage inventory. The employees saw that he was not just some distant owner making decisions from an office tower. He was willing to roll up his sleeves and work beside them. The diversity training happened in the 2nd week. At first, some employees were skeptical. Tom admitted later that he thought it would be a waste of time, just corporate nonsense that would not change anything. But the trainer was good. She did not lecture. She told stories, asked questions, made people think about their own assumptions and biases. By the end of the 3-day session, real conversations were happening. People were opening up about their own experiences with discrimination, about times they had made unfair judgments, about wanting to do better. The new customer service protocol was simple but powerful. Greet everyone. Listen to what they need, provide honest help. No profiling. No assumptions. Just respect. And slowly, word started to spread. A video began circulating on social media. Someone had recorded part of the incident from that first day. Not Jennifer's notes, but actual footage from another customer who had been in the showroom. It showed Gerald's dismissive attitude, showed David being escorted out, showed the disrespect. The video went viral, getting millions of views. At first, David worried it would hurt the dealership. But something unexpected happened. The comments section filled with stories from people who had experienced similar treatment at luxury stores and dealerships. The support was overwhelming. And then came the customers. People started showing up specifically because they had heard about the changes at Heritage Motors. A young woman who had been saving for years to buy her first luxury car came in and was treated like royalty by Patricia. An older man who dressed simply but had just sold his business came in and was helped by Tom, who spent 3 hours finding him the perfect vehicle. A family who had been turned away from other dealerships because of their accent was welcomed with open arms. Sales increased. Not just a little, 30% in the first 2 months. Turns out when you treat people with respect, they want to do business with you. They also tell their friends. Jennifer flourished in her new role. David had been right to promote her. She had a natural ability to lead, to motivate, to solve problems. She also brought ideas that David had never considered. It was Jennifer who suggested they hire bilingual staff members to better serve the diverse community. It was Jennifer who created a referral program that rewarded employees for excellent customer service, not just for making sales. Brian, the security guard, got promoted too. David learned that Brian had been working 2 jobs and studying business management at night. David paid for him to finish his degree and brought him into the management training program. Brian's night job became a thing of the past, and for the first time in years he got to have dinner with his kids on weeknights. The scholarship fund launched in month 3. David partnered with local high schools and community colleges. They would provide full scholarships for 5 students each year to study automotive technology, business management, or related fields. The first recipients were announced at a small ceremony at the dealership. One of them was a 17-year-old girl whose father worked as a mechanic. She cried when she got the news. Her dream of going to college had seemed impossible until now. But the biggest surprise came on a random Tuesday afternoon. David was in his office going over inventory reports when Jennifer knocked on the door. "Someone here to see you. Says it is personal." David looked up, curious. "Did they give a name?" "Gerald Patterson." David's stomach tightened. He had not seen or spoken to Gerald since that morning 3 months ago. "Send him in." Gerald walked in looking different, older somehow. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked like humility. He stood awkwardly near the door. "Thank you for seeing me," Gerald said quietly. "I was not sure you would." "Have a seat," David offered, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Gerald sat down, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "I have been doing a lot of thinking these past few months. A lot of soul-searching. I lost my job, yes, but I also lost my reputation. Nobody in the industry wants to hire me. That video went everywhere. My kids saw it. My wife saw it, and they asked me questions I could not answer." He paused, struggling with his words. "I went to therapy. Started working with someone who specializes in unconscious bias. I never thought I was a bad person, you know? I never thought I was racist or discriminatory. But when I really looked at my actions, when I really examined my assumptions, I was wrong. About so many things." David listened without interrupting. "I am not here to ask for my job back," Gerald continued. "I know that ship has sailed, and honestly, I do not deserve it. I am here to apologize. Really apologize. Not because I want something from you, but because you deserve to hear it. What I did was wrong. How I treated you was unacceptable, and I am sorry." The apology hung in the air between them. David could see that Gerald meant it. This was not a performance. This was genuine remorse. "I appreciate you coming here," David said finally. That took courage. Real change is hard, Gerald. Admitting you were wrong is hard, but it is the first step. "I know I cannot undo what happened," Gerald said, "but I wanted you to know that it changed me. Losing everything made me look at myself in a way I had never done before. I'm trying to be better. To do better." David stood up and extended his hand. Gerald stood too, shaking it firmly. "I hope you find your way," David said sincerely. "Everyone deserves a chance to grow and change." After Gerald left, David stood at his office window looking out at the showroom. Customers browsed the vehicles. Jennifer helped a young couple. Tom laughed with an elderly customer. Brian walked through, checking on things, proud in his new role. His phone buzzed. A message from the scholarship committee. They had received over 200 applications for the 5 spots. Stories of young people with dreams, with potential, who just needed someone to believe in them. David thought about his father again. About washing cars and working hard and maintaining dignity. About the long journey from there to here. About how one moment of disrespect had turned into an opportunity to create real change. The dealership was more than a business now. It was proof that you could succeed without compromising your values. that treating people with respect was not just the right thing to do, it was good business. That second chances and new beginnings were possible for everyone willing to do the work. David smiled and headed back to the showroom floor. There was work to do, customers to help, and a future to build, together.